Jim, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Nick, thanks for having me.
So we're on this episode of Bourbon Birds. We're drinking Nulu bourbon this time. This is a single barrel proof at 116. Pick this one up today, and it smells pretty good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So you've caught me in my off bourbon season. I typically only drink bourbon football to derby. Bourbon makes me hot. It makes my face flush, and I don't like to feel that way typically when it's 99 degrees outside.
It's a little hot out there, but and this one's definitely a hot bourbon, but pretty approachable.
I mean, for 116 and straight, this is pretty smooth.
It is. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
It's good. Nulu bourbon. This is a good pick.
Nulu. So this is MGP distillate, so made in Indiana.
Really new. This is the very north.
So about 4-year-old, 4 to 6.
From the north end of Louisville. By north end, I mean Indiana.
So I want to talk to you about, we've got your cornbread set up here. I want to talk first about what you're doing, and then we'll get into some of the politics of hemp and marijuana.
Sure.
But starting off, I had a chance to watch through Maxim, and you sent me the video. This really funny, I really loved the video of you comparing hemp and your product to orange juice.
Right. So Cornbread Hemp is Kentucky's CBD brand to the nation. We're projecting nationally as a premium CBD brand. We're the only brand in the nation that's flower only, full spectrum, and USDA certified organic. And all these things are a really big deal. We've been focused on the certified organic portion of our product line for some time, but this flower only aspect is super important. And the pandemic really kind of limited our ability to spread that word. And now we sort of are getting back on our feet, getting back out in the world. And this video is our way to tell folks why flower only is so important. And we're really struggling internally trying to explain why flower only is better than whole plant as a CBD formulation. And it's difficult to do without getting bogged down in the jargon of the CBD industry. And when you do that, you've already lost all of the consumers and customers, because the jargon of this industry is newfangled and difficult to understand and kind of squishy. Like some of these words don't even have like appropriate definitions.
Right.
So trying to find a way to explain this to folks had been the challenge. And our eureka moment was settling on orange juice. Like, you get orange juice from oranges, not from the tree. And it would be absurd to think about drinking orange juice that comes from a whole tree. Orange juice. It tastes great. It's good for you. And where does it come from? It comes from oranges. And how do you make orange juice? Well, first, you pluck the orange. You peel it, you squeeze it, you make orange juice. That's delicious. But hey, picking and peeling these oranges takes a lot of time and money. Wouldn't it be easier if we could just cut down the whole damn tree, throw it in a wood chipper, and make orange juice out of that? Mission accomplished. Time and money officially saved. But here we are, people marketing CBD products coming from the whole plant as if that's beneficial and good.
Right.
And so using orange juice and oranges as a metaphor for describing, here's what you want from a CBD product. You want it made from the flower of the hemp plant exclusively, because that's where the cannabinoids are, is all well and good to say. But to be able to describe it through orange juice as a metaphor gives it kind of a bite and a ring, and it makes a more fun video production. And we had a good time doing it.
It's funny. I'll link the video and both on the Apple Podcast, so people can hear it. We'll either embed it on the website or splice it into this video so people can see it. But it's funny. I mean, I think part of what you're up against here is explaining to people that maybe are first timers into this world of what sets you apart. You, like you said, you first have to sort of set the table, and then before you can kind of get into what you're eating. And you do it expertly. It was really funny. It was cute to watch. You're great in it. And what you're talking about though is the tip top of the plant there. You're not. Some of these other guys are are taking the leaves and the sticks and and you illustrate it by taking this whole orange tree and chucking it into a wood chipper, and you're like, got your glass on the other side. Like, you wouldn't drink that.
That shot of me receiving the wood chipper into a glass was a physically painful experience. Luckily, I was wearing eye protection. It was dangerous, and I don't recommend it. But it was all for the art of illustrating the point, which is, this is a terrible, stupid, asinine idea. Don't do this with yourself or your product or what you decide to do. And so I was happy to sacrifice myself for the art.
Well, I'm going to say, you and I have been friends for a long time, and I'm not being paid to say this in no way. Actually, I reached out to you for this interview. I use the product. I get anxiety. I have a hard time sleeping often at night. I got too much going on. A lot of that energy of everything that I got to do the next day. I'll take the nighttime formula before I go to bed, and I'm able to calm down and go to sleep.
Now, here's something really interesting.
Yes.
So you, as a consumer of CBD and coincidentally of Cornbread Hemp CBD, have expressed that you take it for anxiety and sleep. Now, in 2019, Consumer Reports and Gallup both conducted surveys of CBD users to ask them what they were using CBD products for, and the top 3 reasons in both of these surveys were pain, anxiety, and sleep. But because the FDA has not yet regulated CBD at all, as a brand, in our labeling on our website, even now as I'm speaking to you, I cannot tell you that my product does any of these things without risking FDA enforcement. So it's more important than ever for customers, for consumers, to tell other people why CBD may be beneficial, because until the FDA issues regulations, brands like Cornbread cannot properly educate consumers.
So is the reason that your brand and other brands hemp brands can't talk about the properties because of the association with cannabis?
It's not. It's a good question, but the reason is exclusively because the FDA regulates language, speech, relative to food, drug, and cosmetics. The Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act is what gives the FDA its enforcement of power, and it regulates all speech that comes from or regarding food, drugs, and cosmetics. So in this case, we're hopeful, as well as the entire CBD industry, the hemp-derived CBD industry, hemp farmers in Kentucky, are hopeful that CBD or full-spectrum hemp extract products are regulated as a dietary supplement, in which case we can make what the FDA calls structure-function claims. A structure-function claim is saying something like, this product helps maintain normal, healthy sleep cycles. So it doesn't improve, it doesn't cure, it doesn't mitigate, it doesn't diagnose anything, but it helps maintain proper, normal, healthy X. Right. That's a structure function claim. That's what dietary supplements are allowed to make. But until those regulations are in place, CBD companies cannot make structure function claims. Now, drug claims are saying this product cures, treats, diagnoses, prevents X.
Gotcha.
But because there is a drug made from CBD isolate that's been approved by the FDA, no other CBD formulation will be able to make those drug claims because there's already a drug made out of CBD isolate. But full spectrum hemp extract is another animal entirely. And so we're hopeful that full spectrum hemp extract which contains a high percentage of CBD, but also other cannabinoids, including a legal amount of THC. Hi, and this guy.
Yeah. Our director came up. I thought he was coming up for more bourbon. Not more bourbon. We need
droopy microphone issue. So
it's also FDA regulated device for that.
So full spectrum hemp extract, we're hopeful will become the FDA will regulate as a dietary supplement, but the industry has been waiting for this regulation since 2019, and we're still here waiting for it. Now, today, I've not seen it yet, but I believe in the House of Representatives in Congress in DC, they're voting on amendments for some appropriation bill. And among the amendments being voted on are a range of cannabis-related, hemp-related amendments, including an amendment that would encourage the FDA to fast-track their regulation of CBD, of full-spectrum hemp extract, as a dietary supplement, which we're really hopeful that occurs.
Well, that's a lot moving. And I was telling our director, I was telling you earlier, I wanted to talk to you about some of these issues, both on hemp and about cannabis at the federal level, because I don't know anybody out there that knows more about this subject area than you. I mean, before you started, as a refresher for those that don't know Jim or coming back to Jim, before you started this company, you were the marijuana reporter for the nation. I mean, you were publishing in all the major magazines and newspapers about marijuana legalization, about cannabis.
So my Cornbread Mafia book was published in 2012.
Right.
I felt really old when it was published, but it seems like a long time ago now. I don't know what that means about me. It was supposed to be a 2-year project, turned into a 6-year project.
I know something about this.
Reasons. When I had one publisher, lost that publisher, finally got a second publisher. The second publisher was like, great, this is great. We'll take 85,000 words. I was like, fantastic. Here's 140,000 words. And they were like, oh, we'll make a hardcover out of this. And it went through 9 printings in hardcover and then in paperback. And then in 2019, we did a revised paperback. We're producing a podcast of it now. So that'll be out hopefully later this year. That's exciting.
Absolutely. I look forward to that.
Thank you. Me too. And then the success of that book led me into a journalism career covering cannabis at a very high level, policy, politics, on Capitol Hill in the States. I reported for Politico on cannabis in DC on Capitol Hill, in Florida, in Nevada, in Colorado, and on the campaign trail. And then for other outlets like Al Jazeera, Thrillist.
Washington Post?
I don't know that I ever got a cannabis story into Washington Post. I freelanced for the Washington Post when news broke in Kentucky. So I was the Washington Post's stringer.
Yes.
In Kentucky. So I was on the Kim Davis beat for the Washington Post.
Rowan County clerk.
They contacted me on a Monday evening at like 7:30. They said, can you be at the Rowan County Courthouse tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.? I was like, that's kind of far, but sure. And I got there and I was reporting on Kim Davis and taking notes, talking to people, doing the thing. And they called me at like 10:30 and I was like, yeah, I got quotes, I got stuff. Like I'll find a library or a McDonald's with some Wi-Fi and type this up and get it to you. They're like, no. You don't understand. You're leading the Washington Post website right now. We need everything you have.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay,
right.
Okay. And then started reading notes back on the phone.
You're dictating the story over the phone to the editor.
To a reporter partner. Okay. But because I'm on site, even though I'm a stringer, I have the front byline.
Wow.
Right. Wow. So yeah, I'm reading quotes back out of my notebook over the phone. And thank God I actually was doing my job instead of just, futzing around because suddenly I was on the spot. And so I'm doing it. And then my editor later that night, it's like, okay, so tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, wait a minute, tomorrow, I got a 3-hour drive home. And she's like, no, you don't. You're getting a hotel room. I'm like, I didn't pack any clothes. She said, go buy some.
And to catch up on this one, this was the Supreme Court had just legalized same-sex marriage, and for everybody that wasn't in Kentucky or missed this story somehow, you were living under a rock. Kim Davis was refusing to issue marriage licenses
to same-sex couples. And the story that I was telling the Washington Post that was unique in the national press, because I was giving a Kentucky perspective to a national outlet, which these other national outlets lacked, was that, look, this is happening in Moorhead in Rowan County, not because it's backward, but because it's progressive, right? This is a college town with a multi-generational LGBTQ community that's centered around a number of institutions, not just on campus, but in the city. And there are gay people, lesbian people, LGBT people, couples who are confident living publicly their open, authentic lives and understand what their rights are.
Exactly. So culture clash.
Total culture clash, but it was happening in Moorhead, not because it was backward, but because it was progressive.
Yeah.
And that's the story I was able to get through to the national press, through the Washington Post in that work. And it really sort of solidified my ability to be the Washington Post guy when shit hit the fan in Kentucky.
Right.
So,
right.
I can say that on national TV.
Go for it. Shit.
So I mean, 116 proof, huh?
So let's fast forward for a moment. You've solidified yourself in that space, but in doing so, you're now qualified to take a look at some of these efforts. As you mentioned, there's hemp legislation, but there's also cannabis, marijuana legalization, descheduling, essentially at the federal level of cannabis, both in the House and now over in the Senate by Chuck Schumer.
So Chuck Schumer, Majority Leader Schumer, is really following the lead of Cory Booker of New Jersey and Ron Wyden of Oregon, who have been leading this effort for some time. Chuck Schumer, kind of a follower, but as majority leader and also concerned about his political left with people like AOC threatening to primary challenge him.
Right.
He is conscious of finding his closet liberal self and not being such a Wall Street guy and realizing that he needs to step up on this effort. And so he's allowing Cory Booker and Ron Wyden to drive the boat on cannabis legalization. And so they've introduced a companion bill to what's called the MORE Act on the House side. It's got a different name in the Senate. But essentially not just descheduling cannabis, but also reinvesting in communities most negatively impacted by the drug war over time, which by and large is communities of color. So there's a social, racial justice, equity portion to this bill, reinvesting tax revenue into communities most negatively affected by the drug war in these bills. And that's a really exciting part of this process, not just to have a bill in the Senate, but to have a bill that understands the negative impact of the drug war and using cannabis legalization to help right some of those wrongs.
Right. And what we're talking about with descheduling isn't necessarily legalization, but it's an if-so, fact-so kind of a scenario here where by descheduling, you take it out of the Controlled Substances Act, right? And, you're not setting a framework of how this works. You're just saying that we're no longer going to...
We've seen this with hemp, with CBD. Right. Like the CBD legalization, the CBD industry is now the stalking horse or the roadmap for how this will go. If I'm not mistaken, the Senate bill takes jurisdiction away from the Department of Justice and puts it in under Health and Human Services under the FDA. So this backlog, this delay we're seeing in the FDA regulating merely CBD products, we're faced with the reality of a future where the FDA will then be forced to regulate full strength cannabis, which brings up some very fascinating issues. 37 states have medical marijuana. I'm not sure how many. It's hard to keep track. It's easier to keep track of the states without medical marijuana, which Kentucky, Idaho, Texas, and some other ones, Kansas, Nebraska, like Alabama. There's not a lot. Right. Like Oklahoma has medical marijuana. Arkansas has medical marijuana. Louisiana has medical marijuana. West Virginia has medical marijuana. Like Kentucky does not have medical marijuana.
I guess Mark Twain was right.
Well, if that quote is accurate, which I don't think it is.
Probably not.
And if it is accurate, I think he was talking about Cincinnati, which is where he left on that boat trip. It's don't get me down Samuel Clemens biography stuff, because we'll talk about it, and that's not what we're here for.
All right.
116 proof, huh?
116 proof. There's still a good healthy amount in there. I don't know. We can keep drinking it.
Man.
Who knows what kind of discussions? We may just stay here all night.
Man.
So we've got a Senate bill, which is the latest bill. It's a move from the left. The Senate is pretty much evenly split between Democrats and Republicans. How now do you get this thing through the Senate, if at all?
Well, not with 60 votes, you don't, right? And so where's the 10 Republican votes? It's not going to be passed by reconciliation, I'll tell you that. So, the reality is having these bills up for discussion is a huge step forward. Having the social and racial justice equity portions of these bills being discussed in a serious policy context is important, because most people don't understand, can't connect, haven't yet connected how the drug war has impacted negatively communities of color, which is a reality that many people, especially people of color, are all too familiar with, but white people who are insulated from that reality are genuinely ignorant of, and at first blush can be knee-jerk opposed to, because they don't understand the cause and effect relationship therein.
Right.
So it's good to have these conversations, and the Senate bill is a great way to have that conversation. But does it have 10 Republican votes? I don't see that.
Right. And so you and I were talking about this before. I think what's fascinating is the folks like Rand Paul. Like, where does he fall on an issue like this if it gets before the Senate, right, for a vote? How does Rand Paul move as he faces what looks to be Charles Booker in a general election contest? That's presumptive. Booker has to be the Democratic nominee first. But with Booker talking about Black Lives Matter, defunding the police, appealing to urban core areas, and Rand Paul being a Tea Party, anti-government Republican.
Gadfly libertarian.
Exactly. So this sets up a really interesting, unique scenario for our Kentucky's junior senator who's in a re-election contest. Now, does Booker have what it takes to push it over the line? There's all these different political areas we could go with it, but does that set up an interesting vote for Paul?
Well, first of all, I'm old enough to remember when Rand Paul swore on the campaign trail in 2010 that he would only serve 2 terms as senator. So there's that. So
which is pretty common. Once those guys make these promises before they get in, I'm not saying that you should be allowed to do that.
Sure, but Rand Paul cut his teeth saying that he was not a common politician, right? He had a message from the Tea Party.
Absolutely.
I have a message from the Tea Party, is what I recall Rand Paul saying.
I remember this.
Swearing up and down that he would serve 2 terms. So here we are at the end of those 2 terms, and he's running against presumptively a black man from Louisville, which conventional wisdom in Kentucky politics would say not a chance in hell a black man could win statewide office, except for the fact that we have a black man in statewide office as Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, who won as a Republican. So it kind of...
During the Trump wave, with Trump's endorsement.
During the Trump wave, with the Trump endorsement. So that kind of complicates the conventional wisdom therein.
Right.
So your question, I believe, is, does Rand Paul lean into cannabis legalization and even social and racial justice equity as a way to declaw the Booker campaign?
Or just because it's the right thing to do. I mean, it doesn't have to. It could be either or, right? I mean, I remember talking to Paul about this, 2012, and Paul was in favor of some level of marijuana legalization for this very matter. Now, Paul could have the opportunity to lead on the issue.
Yeah, to his credit, I recall Rand Paul being a strong advocate for hemp legalization with Jamie Comer, and when that was an unpopular position to take. Jamie Comer and Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, for that matter, were campaigning for hemp legalization in front of the Farm Bureau ham breakfast, I believe, help me out, 12. Let's see.
It's either 12 or 13. I think 13 it passed to the state legislature. 12. Yeah.
So in front of, at the state fair, in front of the ham breakfast for the Farm Bureau, which is traditionally a fairly conservative affair. And at the time, the Farm Bureau dead set against hemp and marijuana. It was a bold effort led by Jamie Comer, but followed by Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, advocating for hemp legalization, got the Farm Bureau to go from against to neutral, which allowed it to get through because the Farm Bureau pulls a lot of weight.
And they were able to move McConnell.
And then that gave McConnell the confidence and the platform and the ability to then advocate for it on the national level, on the Senate side, which was an absolute necessary piece of this. And Ron Wyden of Oregon had been working on this for years. And McConnell finally saw something that he could agree with Ron Wyden about. But Ron Wyden and McConnell together legalized hemp through the Senate.
Right. But the vehicle they did it in, Jim, as you were explaining to me earlier, it sets off all these other implications down the road for how cannabis legalization can work. They did it via the Farm Bill.
So the Farm Bill. So one thing that I learned as a journalist, and something that you know, and something that folks watching this is kind of an inside baseball audience, as I assume, knows, is that Schoolhouse Rock bill on Capitol Hill shit, that bill died a long time ago, right? Like that bill died in committee, like straight up murdered. That poor cartoon bill. Getting a standalone bill on anything passed through Congress and signed by the president is impossible in a dysfunctional Congress, which is where we are in life. A standalone bill on anything is never going to happen. So what Wyden and McConnell very shrewdly understood was in order to get this passed, they had to do it first in steps, couldn't do it all at once. And they did it through the Farm Bill, through committee, so that they basically slid one page into a 1,000-page bill that was guaranteed to pass because the Farm Bill funds the entire U.S. Department of Agriculture, which funds everything from farm subsidies and crop insurance to free school lunch programs. Right. So everybody in Congress has skin in the game in the Farm Bill.
Exactly. You can't be opposed to the Farm Bill.
Rand Paul can be opposed to the Farm Bill. Rand Paul votes against the Farm Bill. Rand Paul says he's for hemp and is an advocate for hemp, but votes against the Farm Bill in final passage.
So chew on this for a second. This is non sequitur, but Rand Paul, one of the most beloved politicians in Kentucky, over 50% approval rating. Andy Beshear, over 50% approval rating. Now continue, Jim. You were making a point, but I wanted to set that aside for a minute because you'll chew on that later as you're trying to sleep, and you're going to need some of your own product here to go to bed at night to try and figure that one out.
No, I'm not, because I have this 116 proof bourbon in July. It's 100 degrees outside. And now it feels like 116 because of the 116 proof bourbon. I'm lit up. And I'm really not in control of what I'm saying, so the rest of this interview could be fascinating.
It really could be.
I might need some more. You want to refill me?
Oh, I can refill you.
All right, do it.
So Farm Bill.
So for the Farm Bill. So 2014 Farm Bill, they pass a one-page pilot project to legalize hemp.
Right.
Now, my book, to give some context, Cornbread Mafia hardcover is published in 2012. Jamie Comer then, in 2012, lobbies the Farm Bureau breakfast that August. Mm-hmm. And then
they roll.
So hold on. So he's elected in 2011 as ag commissioner.
Exactly.
2012 is his first year in office. And then 2013, the short legislative session, they get hemp passed through the legislature. And I'm in a front row seat. I am invited to be an at-large seat on the hemp commission. Jamie Comer realizes the first step of legalizing hemp is back in the Paul Patton administration, I believe. This is really taxing the old memory here. In the late 90s, early 2000s is in the Paul Patton administration, they impaneled a hemp commission to study hemp. But that commission was never sat. Okay. So it was on the books, but never executed. So Agriculture Commissioner Comer then sat the hemp commission that was on the books in order to create media attention and momentum to then pass the bill. And so as part of this rather toothless but still public relations important commission, Ag Commissioner Comer invited me to be an at-large member of this panel, which I accepted graciously because it was great to be recognized as an expert in the field back then as a young person, which I am not now. So
we're still young, Jim. We're still young.
You can keep telling yourself that, but I've come to terms with where I'm at in life. So I watched from a front row bleacher seat perspective, Ag Commissioner Comer get this passed through the legislature, through the Senate first, and then the Stumbo-controlled House to give everyone a perspective of the time frame we're talking about.
So 2013, it passes the House.
Right.
And then we've got 14 with McConnell and the Farm Bill.
Correct.
Setting up. So the 13 bill in Kentucky, all it did was set the framework. You still had to have permission to put plant in the ground.
Correct.
Unless it was, I think, through research institutions. And I think you had UK and U of L, something like that, come on board. But then, which we can set that aside. We don't even need to.
Land grant institutions, UK and KSU, I believe. U of L is not a land grant institution. It's a whole different thing. But okay, we'll set that aside. The bourbon.
The bourbon. So, just for argument's sake. So 14, McConnell gets Farm Bill, which sets up the actual doing of producers in Kentucky coming into Kentucky and putting plant in the ground, more than just what the Ag Commissioner at the time was setting off to do.
To be clear,
research.
The Farm Bill should have passed in 13, but because of a dysfunctional Congress, because a John Boehner-controlled House could not abide by a Barack Obama presidency, that Farm Bill was delayed from 2013 to February of 14, to be clear.
Okay.
So should have been a 13 Farm Bill, was a 14 Farm Bill, got plants in the ground. We never conceived of at the time of a cannabinoid hemp market. At the time, it was
industrial hemp,
fiber stalk, stem, leaves, seeds, like seeds for food production, fiber for construction, for textiles, for denim, cellulose from the stalk for ethanol, all these like agricultural industrial uses, and then simultaneously this notion that, okay, if the only thing you're restricting is the THC content, so this arbitrarily weird low 0.3% THC content gets stuck in this bill, is like, okay, you can grow hemp, but only if the THC content is not above 0.3% by dry weight. Then really creative geneticists out in Colorado, where full strength cannabis had been legal for years by then, were like, well, we can just flip the ratio. So traditionally, cannabis has a ratio of a high THC level, a low CBD ratio. But geneticists were able to pretty quickly, over the course of basically a year, develop multiple strains of hemp that, or multiple strains of cannabis that met the definition of hemp. With having like a 8 to 10% CBD content and a negligible below 0.3% THC content, then all of a sudden the cannabinoid hemp market became a real thing. At the same time, parents of children with epilepsy and other seizure-inducing conditions who were giving their kids all this crazy medication with crazy side effects were advocating state legislatures, look, I can give my kid this Ziploc bag full of drugs, or I can give them
a dropper full.
This dropper full of hemp oil. And we have better results with this hemp oil with fewer side effects. And God bless these parents, because they were the most effective advocates for cannabinoid hemp that America has ever seen. And in the 2018 Farm Bill, in the subsequent bill, McConnell, to his credit, ensured that cannabinoid production of hemp was enshrined in the law. Like, it's protected in the law, and that gave birth to the fulsome CBD industry as we know it today. It's what made Cornbread Hemp possible.
Right. But for the topic we were discussing, here's why it's important, is because of how you get single bills inserted into law with major federal changes isn't through a Chuck Schumer bill. It's not a standalone. It's not a standalone bill in the House. It's not a standalone bill in the Senate. You insert it in
to a major
appropriations bill like the Farm Bill.
That has to pass. And so all these decisions get made in the agricultural committees. The House Agricultural Committee, is testing my knowledge, the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Forestry, and something.
You got me.
But
I don't know.
The agricultural committees.
Yes.
Where not a lot of people are looking. It's not politically hot topic territory. And these sorts of things can sort of slide through. Different versions of the bill emerge. They get resolved in a conference committee. Again, a very quiet process that's closed door, no cameras. And these things can get solved by reasonable people in a way that isn't exposed to the harsh political spotlight.
Right. And perhaps in 2022,
I think
during our midterm elections, there's a possibility that people could figure out, or if not then maybe in 24 as we have another presidential contest. There's all sorts of political calculus that you can do here. And the reason that I talk about this, one, I mean, like obviously for you, you've got a vested interest here, but for everybody else, it's no longer a parity; it's a majority of Americans want to see this happen, and it is happening, as you indicated before. It's happening at the state level. It's the feds that are behind the times. So either the feds put in a big infrastructure that takes care of all 50 states and territories, or each individual state in their own capacity are going to put up their own framework, which make it troublesome and difficult for people to operate intra-state lines.
I mean, speaking as a co-founder of a CBD brand that's serving 50 states in every U.S. territory, there is a regulatory patchwork of compliance state to state that's very difficult to navigate, and in some cases contradictory. Without federal regulations in place, Texas, Iowa, New York State, California are all making their own rules about full spectrum hemp extract in retail settings that make it difficult to comply. If you like the California rules and the Texas rules and the Iowa rules and the New York State rules, like none of these rules are the same. And only federal rules will solve that problem. Now, as we look to what it's going to look like when federal full-strength cannabis legislation goes into place, and the FDA, I think this is where I was headed some point in time in the past.
116 proof.
116 proof.
By the way, Liquor Barn, you're welcome to sponsor the program any point in time that you want to.
This conversation has been sponsored by Liquor Barn.
So FDA is where you were going with the conversation.
Right. So as a CBD brand, we're hopeful that the FDA will regulate CBD products as a dietary supplement. In 36 states have legalized something that they call medical marijuana, which presumes that it's a drug. The FDA is not built for this. The FDA is not built for an agricultural product to be considered a drug. That's not how the FDA works. That's not how the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act is crafted. The FDA wants one compound to be isolated from a plant and then put into a sugar pill and then be sold on a shelf.
Right.
Like, that is what the FDA understands. Medical marijuana as a concept blows the FDA's mind. Can't conceive of it. And so it's having trouble with full spectrum hemp extract. We thought they would regulate it in 2019, and here we are, 2 years later, waiting for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the Senate bill puts jurisdiction of cannabis, pulls it away from the Department of Justice and puts it into the FDA's pocket, but the FDA is not built for it. So when we talk about federal legalization, it's not just legalizing it or decriminalizing it. We have to have a whole new framework for understanding how we regulate it and talk about it and think about it from a policy regulatory perspective, because the current regulatory framework just does not compute, can't conceive of a plant with a variety of compounds that are active simultaneously, that are smoked or inhaled, to be beneficial in any way. It's just alien to the FDA.
Right.
So legalizing it at a federal level, even if it's through the next farm bill, which I think is the easiest vehicle to do it, we still have to think about how the FDA is going to understand and then regulate this product on a federal level once it's decriminalized and taken away from the Department of Justice. So the USDA on the farming side and the USDA Organics program, God bless it, remarkable. The USDA Organics program is certifying as organic full spectrum hemp extract that includes THC, particularly our products here at Cornbread Hemp, USDA certified organic. By the way, remarkable that the USDA Organic program will certify as organic a product that contains THC as it does. That's a huge step towards normalizing THC as a compound in the mind of the federal government. Right. But we're a long way from full strength cannabis, legalizing it at the federal level, whether that's through the next farm bill or through a standalone bill or through a subsequent farm bill in the future. We still have to understand that regulating it is the next step. Legalizing it through Congress is only part of the process. Then regulating it through the executive branch is a whole nother trial.
Well, to quote Dumb and Dumber, you're telling me there's a chance.
I'm telling you that there's a chance. Yeah, but it's like this process is difficult and long.
Right.
And for advocates who want to see things the way that I would like to see them, which is that one day we'll live in a world where cannabis is legal nationally, and this period of prohibition that we live in now will be seen as asinine. We've got a long way to go because we've had almost 100 years to build a structure of prohibition, and breaking down those barriers one at a time is difficult.
Right. But we're only 88 years in Kentucky. Ish.
Only. You don't say.
From where we once were. And it's a completely different space than we once were. And you can sort of see out on the horizon somewhere where this is headed. And I think politicians are starting to see where this is headed too.
Well, that's the good sign. I mean, I think the one thing that the hemp legalization has done is giving farmers a taste of what potential cannabis legalization could mean to them and their families and farming communities. And in Frankfurt and in DC, but particularly in places like Frankfurt, the law enforcement lobby pulls a lot of weight. And if it's law enforcement versus hippies, law enforcement wins. If it's law enforcement versus Black activists, law enforcement wins in Frankfurt. But if it's law enforcement versus farmers, law enforcement better watch out.
So it's interesting. We do have one more piece here, and then I'll leave it at this topic. It's 116 proof. 2023, we're going to have a gubernatorial election.
Okay, yeah.
One of the candidates, most likely, almost 100% likely, is going to be Ryan Quarles at least in the Republican side in the primary. He's the current agriculture commissioner.
You don't say.
Seems like he would want farmers to be on his side, and it seems like this could be an issue that differentiate Republicans from one another in a primary contest. Could we see that as a tipping point in Kentucky?
Is a really interesting notion. I think Governor Beshear has done a great job with the hand he's been dealt. It's a historic 100-year storm he's dealing with. And yet Kentucky now has a gigantic surplus windfall rainy day fund that he can campaign on. But I've not seen, and again, I've been busy doing this business. I've not seen Governor Beshear lean into anything regarding cannabis legalization other than being mildly in favor of it. I've not seen him prioritize this in his messaging.
So there's space.
Sure. In the Republican primary, you mentioned Commissioner Quarles. I've heard other potential candidates who might throw their hat in on the Republican side.
It'll likely be a big field, and that's sort of where the question comes from. If you get 6 contenders, 7 contenders, 8 contenders in a Republican primary and 23 to take on Beshear, they're going to be pretty close to one another in what their ideology is.
I'll tell you this. Because the FDA did not issue regulations in a timely manner, a lot of what politicians told farmers in 2018 and 2019 turned out not to be true. I don't think that's necessarily the politicians' fault, but promises to farmers about what hemp could be potentially did not occur. 2018, when I was a mere reporter.
A blessing to reporters, Jim. Not a mere reporter, but a god amongst men.
A freelancer. I was a freelancer digging a hole. Let's be very clear. 116 proof, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So hemp was going for something like $40 a pound. And a crop would yield 1,000 pounds an acre. It wasn't hard for farmers to do some quick math and think, oh shit, really?
Yeah.
This could be the thing that finally makes
money from farming.
Makes this work that I do night and day, every day, worth it.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, once hemp was legalized, but the FDA did not issue regulations, the impact of the non-regulation by the FDA meant that major retailers, major grocery, major pharmacy, big box retailers do not carry hemp CBD products. Kroger, Costco, Walgreens, Rite Aid, CVS might carry topicals, lotions, but won't carry ingestibles, capsules, oils, gummies, which are the big ticket items. And they are the largest retailers in America for people looking for these sorts of products. And so without a person's ability to go into Target or Walmart and talk to a pharmacist and get CBD products, the financial projections of many of these CBD hemp companies went bust. And what those companies were telling farmers is, give me this year, and next year it's going to be X. Next year, the year after it'll be Y. And everyone was assuming that the FDA was going to come in a timely manner with regulations. And those regulations have not come. And consequently, a lot of farmers grew a lot of hemp, and then it cratered. And we're very fortunate at Cornbread Hemp that we're not the farmer. We partner with farmers, but we're not the farmer. So we didn't bear that burden. But the farmers who did bear that burden, those farmers got burned. And politicians who are adjacent to that problem are going to have a hard time in future elections. And that's not necessarily their fault. It's the fault of things that they can't control because it's the FDA.
Right.
But until the FDA comes in with regulations to fully realize the full spectrum hemp market in America, those politicians are left holding back.
Well, there's a lot to chew on with all that. I think that the next several years in this space is going to be incredibly fascinating to watch from a political perspective. But I think I'm more enthused to see what happens with your company and your product I remember hanging out with you when you were talking about launching this company. And
we've known each other for a long time.
And now to see it where it's at today and to know that the heights that is going to reach is incredibly fulfilling to me to see as just a friend of yours. So I'm very enthused and just incredibly grateful for your time on this and really, really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Well, look, I really like what you're doing, being sort of free from corporate media and launching a startup of your own. Have very much have like a feeling of startup empathy for what you're going through as a startup media enterprise. So, thank you for inviting me to talk to you on this. I would just encourage folks to think about a world where this is legal, a world where not just CBD hemp is fully legal instead of borderline legal as it is now, but full strength cannabis, not just caged in a dispensary, but fully realized. Kentucky has a legacy bourbon industry that brings billions of dollars into Kentucky, not just in the bottles that we export, but in the tourists that we bring to Kentucky, and give people who come to Kentucky an opportunity to see Kentucky for our best side. All of these things are real opportunities to take the model of the bourbon industry and create a Kentucky cannabis industry that really surprises a lot of people with our quality and our excellence, and also just introducing our people to visitors from out of state, other countries, everywhere. Like, we're potentially a global center for cannabis production. We've just got a start with hemp. I think our farmers finally realize that there's a real potential here. Our politicians realize that there's real potential here. There's only a few impediments to fully realizing this. And as we look to the next legislative session, I think in 2020, before COVID, we had a real opportunity to pass a medical marijuana bill.
Right.
It passed the House overwhelmingly. It had the votes to pass out of Senate Judiciary Committee at the very moment that COVID locked down the session. This past session this year was a short session. Lots of reasons it couldn't pass. It was short, and then also raised revenues. So you had to have a suspension of rules, yada, yada, yada. But 2022, there's a real chance that not just a medical marijuana bill might pass, but also a decrim bill might pass. I think there's a lot of appetite for removing impediments in the judiciary system. We've got a giant backlog of cases in the judiciary system that got pushed back because of COVID. A large percentage of those cases are marijuana related. It makes no sense to prosecute marijuana crimes in the system that's as backed up as it is now. And so being able to expunge and move on from marijuana crimes makes a lot of sense in the judicial system in Kentucky today. So I think there'll be a lot of appetite for looking at what a smart decriminalization bill might look like in the next session, and also legalizing medical marijuana. And when we do, we need to make sure that we grant reciprocity. So for folks who aren't in the weeds here, granting reciprocity would mean allowing someone from another state with a medical marijuana card to come into Kentucky and purchase medical marijuana in a dispensary, where without reciprocity, it would be closed to only Kentucky residents. One, that's important for increasing the potential market for medical marijuana in Kentucky for states that we may be in front of, which in this case is a limited number, but Tennessee, for example, Indiana, for example. And also for folks who are out of state who want to come experience Kentucky cannabis, who already have a medical marijuana card from another state, California, West Virginia, literally 38 states that I won't name here, or 37 states or 36 states.
A lot. Most of them.
Most of them. Most people from America who come to the Bourbon Trail are from states where medical marijuana is legal. And for those people with a medical marijuana card from another state, it would be nice to grant them reciprocity to say, if you have a medical marijuana card from Ohio, you can come to Kentucky and purchase medical marijuana. And if a police stops you for marijuana possession, you have a card from another state that says, please don't arrest me for possessing this marijuana, cannabis. So granting reciprocity is a huge piece of this, so that people from other states can start to experience Kentucky cannabis. As we use this as a step towards a full legalization of cannabis in Kentucky and nationwide.
Yeah.
But, we're one of 14 states, I believe, without medical marijuana. And for the sake of not being totally embarrassed by the world, we need to not be the last state. Utah has medical marijuana, is what I'm saying, Nick. Utah.
On that note, we'll be heading into another session soon. There's a lot of reasons politically to take this up. We'll see if somebody has the courage. Jim, thank you so much.
Nick, thanks for having me. We're shaking hands in COVID. It's crazy.
Oh, man.
It's crazy.
Lick my fingers.
Don't.